Folks, it is pretty late right now as I'm recording this. And yes, I'm recording it a little bit in advance. And the reason why is because I've been enthralled with this article from the Epoch Times. Now, what I am reading in this article is just a fascinating story about the issue of the Supreme Court and Roe versus Wade. Now, the title of this article is Mississippi asks Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade in abortion case. I'm going to read the first few paragraphs and then I'm going to get into something, and I want you guys to bear with me because what I'm about to share is critically important, right? This is not something that I want to have escaped from you. This is an important thing that we've got to discuss. So let me read the first part of this. It said, Mississippi's Attorney General asked the U.S. Supreme Court on July 22nd to overturn the landmark abortion case, Roe versus Wade, and argued the practice should be considered a constitutional right. I'm going to quote here. It says, the conclusion that abortion is a constitutional right has no basis in text, structure, history, or tradition. By the way, this is who I'm quoting here in this article is Attorney General Lynn Fitch, who is, of course, one of the people that is on this case, right? He is actually the Attorney General who is filing this case. Now, the High Court in May agreed to hear Mississippi's appeal of a 2019 court ruling striking down a state law that prohibited abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. That case, Dobbs versus Jackson, is expected to be argued when the Supreme Court's term starts in October. In brief, the Mississippi Attorney General noted that the Constitution's text doesn't mention abortion and said adhering to the 1973 decision is, quote, dangerously corrosive to our constitutional system. Now, the Supreme Court at the time ruled that abortion could be legalized prior to viability, which is generally the 24th week of pregnancy. Now, I'm not even going to get into that whole thing because one of the things that I really want to address here is how much of a baloney case Roe versus Wade actually was. It is really interesting to consider the fact that Roe versus Wade never really got the attention that it should have at the time that the decision was actually rendered. And there are so many intricacies associated with the progression that led to the Roe versus Wade decision, especially as it related to the issue of the constitutionality of the right to privacy and so on and so forth. But not once on any level was there a discussion in Roe versus Wade concerning the fact that we are dealing with another human life in the womb of that mother. There was never a discussion that was brought up with that. And I want you to understand that if you would take some time to learn the history of the Roe versus Wade decision, you would recognize something very quickly. If you look at all of the cases that surround it, where it led, where it came from, where it went to, you look at all the history behind it, literally, you guys, you can see the orchestration of wickedness that was actually taking place when this case was actually rendered. Every detail and every previous case that led to this, that caused this particular case to have credence in being heard, was orchestrated in a way where it should not have gone the way it did, but it went anyway without any regard to the law, without any regard to the safety of children or the mothers, or without any other regard to any other thing that was of critical importance. You can see if you study the case history and where things went and how Roe versus Wade happened, you can see the satanic conspiracy that took place to bring it right to that area. By the way, right down to the very decision when the decision was actually made. Did you know that the day that Roe versus Wade's decision actually came out in favor of abortion was the same day that Lyndon Johnson actually died? So there was no real press or media attention at that time. And what seemed to be reprehensible in the early 70s became normal with the flick of a little switch in the judicial system. Folks, we right now, as I'm talking, are witnessing and watching Satan do the same thing with many other issues in this country. We're watching Satan do this with critical race theory, ushering in the movement towards Marxism and all the other evils associated with the movement of organizations like Black Lives Matter and all these other organizations. We are watching our country turning on a dime and beginning to call good evil and evil good. And the enemy is orchestrating it piece by piece. And perhaps the worst part about what we're seeing is the fact that the church continues to stand still because they are under the leadership of cowardly pastors who will not speak up about these political issues and bring them into the picture of the light shed through the lens of our worldview as the Bible commands. The satanic and brutally evil conspiracy that continues to just literally rip the heart of man away from God is growing on so many levels it isn't even funny. If you don't believe me, I just want to ask you to do me this favor. Look into the history of Roe versus Wade. There's a great documentary that is put on by the Federalist. I would highly recommend that you watch that documentary because it does a very, very, very good job dealing with and demonstrating the history that surrounded the judicial foundation for how Roe came into play. When you look at every single element, it all related to a lack of understanding concerning the spiritual influence that was driving these decisions to the place of where now we sit here today and we are staring down the window of the death of almost 100 million babies. That is not where it should have been. That is not the place that we as the church should have allowed it to go. It's time, as the days are getting darker and as Jesus is coming home soon, that we're coming back for us soon to take us home, that we open our eyes to recognize the destructive force of what the enemy wants to do, and that we keep sober and watchful because Jesus is coming back soon. And folks, we need to pay attention even to the little details, because the little details turn into the very large details, and the very large details leads to destruction and death. Let's open our eyes and pay attention to what God is trying to tell us as the body of Christ, that we would know what it means to take a stand for righteousness. God bless you guys.